Hello everybody, it's Kara from Wild Book Garden, and today I'm here with the Trick or Treat book tag. I'm not actually sure, but I will, I'll have the correct name in the title here. This is of course a Halloween themed book tag, nice, short, sweet, because I can sometimes do short content. And I actually was tagged 1 or 2 years ago, I think, maybe more, by my friend Jocelyn from Yogi with the Book. I don't think she's currently making videos right now, but I will link her social media down below. And I think the original version of this tag has actually been taken down or privated, so I'll do my best to try to find that, but if not, I'll just list the questions I use. So let's go ahead and get into it. I have my cute little kitty moon earrings. I think they're from Etsy, so I will link that down below if I can find it, but I just think they're super cute, and I feel like they're good Halloween earrings, but you can also just wear them like in general, you know? Like they're not like so specific to Halloween, I think. Anyway, so the first question is carving pumpkins. What book would you carve up and light on fire? And we're starting out with a very controversial answer already, because I think I'd have to say the Life Ship Traders trilogy by Robin Hobb. Yeah, like it's funny because the book that I actually liked least of hers, like rating wise, is it Assassin's Quest, I think? That's the one that I actually gave like 1.5 stars, but I think the Life Ship Traders books are more personally offensive to me. Robin Hobb and I just don't see eye to eye on, I think, a lot of things. I don't like the way that she writes characters. I feel like her character and story choices are really, really forced, and she kind of ends up making her books predictable in very specific ways because the thing that happens is always like the worst thing to happen, and in, again, very specific ways. Also, I hate the way that she does her feminism. I'm assuming that some of her books are supposed to be feminist, even though we don't really see that in my opinion. I strongly reject like 95% of the things that happen at the end of this trilogy. Like the way that the book ends and the way the series ends, I think is a cheap cop-out. And I also, like, I've said this before, but I think that I wouldn't be so angry about these books if not for a couple of things. Like if, for one thing, they weren't so almost universally loved, like, because I'm constantly confronted with these books and with how much people love them, and so it's hard not to think about them and about how much I think they don't deserve this love. And it just makes me really sad and disappointed and upset to think about all of the really talented authors who I think do everything much better and who are never going to get even a quarter of a tenth of her fame and her money. Yeah, like, I'm sure Robin Hobb is like a nice person. I obviously have never like interacted with her personally, but just from the way that she comes across in her books, I don't think we would get along. I know that she was writing these a couple of decades ago, but even for the time, I think the way they handle violence against women is reprehensible. And the way that we are supposed to excuse things. And I feel like she's just beating you over the head with how you are supposed to feel about things and then not backing that up in the story, which I personally find very irritating. And then the other thing that I was mentioning about, like, I don't think I'd be this upset about these books if not for a couple of things. One of them is how, like, popular they are. And then another is how aggressive and nasty parts of the fandom can be. I really don't like being told that I'm just not smart enough to understand why a book is brilliant. And there's a significant chunk of the Robin Hobb fan base that I feel like does that very often. So anyway, yeah, Life Ship Traders books, that's my answer. Okay, and then if you're still watching after this unpopular opinion, number 2 is Trick or Treat. What character is a treat? What character is a trick? So for a treat, I went with Garlic from the Garlic and the Vampire series. This is the second one, which is Garlic and the Witch by Brie Paulson. I just read this earlier this month and absolutely loved it. Garlic is just like the sweetest little nugget. I just adore her. She's just like so sweet and kind, and these books are just so cozy and charming and lovely. I feel like this one left off at a good point, but I would read like a zillion of these. I love these so much. And then for a trick, I don't love when questions kind of ask you to spoil a book, basically. So I kind of interpreted this a little bit differently. So I went with a character where my kind of expectations were tricked, or like my feelings about a character I feel like were tricked or were very different at the end. So I went with Montgomery Lawton from The Daughter of Dr. Moreau by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. And that is because he's one of those characters where, like, the first few times we read from his perspective, like, there are some things where I'm like, ooh, like, I want to like you as a character, I want to find you interesting, but this is giving me pause. But by the end of the book, I really, really cared about him. I was really invested in him. I mean, honestly, like, all of the characters that you were supposed to care about, I really cared about. Sylvia Minor Garcia is good at that. But yeah, I just found him such an interesting character. He's one of those like she does these characters so well where they're very like imperfect, but you still care about them anyway. And I definitely really enjoyed him. Number 3, Candy Corn. What book is always sweet? And so I went with Cotillion by Georgette Heyer, which is one of my faves. And actually this is perfect timing because as part of my booktube birthday week, I did, one of the videos I did was on some of my favorite comfort rereads, and Cotillion is one of the ones I talked about. So I will link that video down below. I'll link that whole playlist if you missed it. But yeah, this is definitely always sweet. It's a book I go to for comfort, and it's just so lovely and cozy and funny. I love the characters. I love the romance. I love just how fun and charming this book is. It's definitely my favorite Georgette Heyer book of the ones that I've read, and yeah, I just love it. I keep coming back to it. Number 4, Ghosts. What character would you love to visit you as a ghost? This is another one that's hard to talk about without spoilers, so I'm going to keep it very vague. But there is a particular character from Deathless by Catherine M. Valente who I really, really enjoyed, and I would just like love to hang out with this character. Yeah, like I don't want to obviously give anything away about that story, but like I feel like we would really get along, and I'd love to hang out with them. Number 5, dressing up in costume. What character would you want to be for a day? This is usually a question that's really hard for me because even when I love characters, I don't like thinking about like being them. Like I'd rather like be myself and hang out with them, you know? But I did come up with an answer, and I picked Effie from 10,000 Stitches by Olivia Atwater, specifically like near the end of the book, not like, because some of her earlier circumstances are like really not great. But I love Effie as a character, and I would like to, I think it'd be fun to be in this world. I mean, fun, even though there are some like dangerous things about it as well, but yeah, I just really enjoyed Effie, and I also really love her love interest, so I feel like that was another strong recommendation. Really love this series, obviously, because I talk about it a lot. And then finally, the last question is Blood and Gore. What book was so creepy that you had to take a break from it for a while? So this question was also really hard for me because this is not really my experience with those kinds of books. Like I'm pretty particular about like the creepy or spooky books I read anyway, but generally if it's one that's really freaking me out, I will actually like read it quicker. Like I kind of push myself to read it quicker so that I can, you know, kind of get that catharsis of finishing it and, you know, being able to move on to something else. Like I did that actually recently with The Hollow Places by T. Kingfisher, which is not like a super horror book or anything, but it is horror, and I like wanted to finish that one because I knew I wanted to like go to bed already having finished that, so I did, and then I read a little bit of Garlic and the Witch. But I did eventually think of a book for this one, and that is one I read a really long time ago, so I'm gonna do my best to remember things about it. But that is The Kingdom of Little Wounds by Suzanne Kokol. This is like such a weird book. It's a historical one, and I think it was maybe set in, was it the Netherlands maybe? I'm not sure. But yeah, it's one of the weirdest books I've ever read. There were some things about the writing that I loved, and I really liked the beginning of the book, but it definitely was one, like it was a very unpleasant reading experience for most of it, and I'm pretty sure this is one that took me a long time to get through. Like, and just like the descriptions, like I think I read a lot of historical fiction, and I like when authors, you know, don't shy away from how things were back then, you know, in various time periods. But I think there's a specific subset of historical fiction writers who seem to think that their credibility as an author is based on how disgusting they can be about like various things. So like there was a lot of detail that I did not need about like illnesses and like bodily fluids and functions. And then there were also just very like uncomfortable and unpleasant aspects related to some of the characters and the relationships. And this was also just a very depressing book for a lot of it. So there were just a lot of things that made me like not enjoy reading this. I did finish it, but I think it took me a long time. And there was like some payoff at the end a little bit, but overall this was not like a pleasant reading experience. And it's such a weird book. Like I don't even know how to like talk about it or who to like maybe recommend it to, because it was just so strange and such an unpleasant experience. Let me know if you have read any of these books and have similar opinions or different. I know this is going up on Halloween, so it's a little late to do it, but if you would like to do this, I definitely tag you. I hope that if you are doing anything for Halloween that you have a safe and happy holiday. Yeah, I don't really have any Halloween plans, but I thought this would be a good time to do this tag. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you soon with another video, and I hope you love the next book you read. Bye!